It's Easter weekend.
It's Easter.
It's Easter at the moment, so you might have been shopping around for some chocolates, some Easter eggs, and Easter bunnies, and you might have noticed maybe that chocolate's kind of getting expensive. It's starting to go up a little bit, and there's a good reason behind that. And well, not a good reason. There's a reason behind it. It's not a positive. It's not a positive thing.
A very good reason behind it.
And unfortunately, it's probably going to get a lot worse. So CNBC reported the world faces the worst supply deficit in decades, with farmers in West Africa struggling against bad weather, disease, and failing trees. Cocoa futures contracts have, we can kind of look at the price of cocoa to see how dramatic this has been recently. So 12 months ago, for a metric ton of cocoa, it was $2,900 US. Today, it's $9,600 for a metric ton of cocoa, which is a 230% increase in 12 months. Which is pretty. It's a pretty big increase. Pretty substantial.
That's insane, dude. That's a very big increase. Well, no wonder chocolate's so flippin' expensive.
Yeah, and it's essentially been caused by what's being described as the worst supply deficit in 60 years. So the International Cocoa Organization has forecast a supply deficit of 374,000 tons for the 2023-2024 season, a 405% increase from a deficit of 74,000 tons in the previous season. So a 400% increase in the deficit in just a year. And it doesn't look like it's going to go away anytime soon. There's actually just, it's really interesting, there's actually just 2 countries that represent 60% of the global cocoa production market, Ivory Coast and Ghana. And crops in both of those regions have been hit by black pod disease and swollen shoot virus. To kind of
can you explain to me, Hamish, how both of those diseases work?
Yeah, I'm actually an expert in this, so I'm glad you asked.
Oh god.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but it doesn't sound good.
Idea. But there you go. No, that's terrible, man. That sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure, it sucks for us because chocolate's more expensive, but I imagine these countries is probably a big part of a lot of people's livelihoods.
Yes, exactly right. So for consumers, this is a fairly classic supply shock. Another one.
Yeah.
that we've seen our fair share of those in the last couple of years. I'm sure everyone's quite familiar with what a supply shock is now. But we're probably going to go ahead and see it in higher prices, of course, for products that have cocoa in them, chocolate, or more likely, or very likely alongside higher prices, is shrinkflation, which is rather than increasing prices, the company can keep the price the same or raise them a little bit and then just shrink the size of the product. So you feel like you're still paying the same amount, but you're paying the same amount for less.
I've already seen that starting to happen in my local shopping centre.
Yeah.
Some of the blocks are Kit Kat. I can't remember if it's like 170 grams or 190 grams, and then the other one, the newer ones are like 165 grams. So it must be 170. It's gone down to 165, and they just dunk, slowly get smaller.
Yeah.
But yeah, crazy.
Yeah, insane. And for some of the bigger brands, you actually might not have noticed price increases yet or substantial price increases yet. And that's because big companies who depend on particular commodities, so like airlines depending on oil, or in this case, chocolate companies depending very heavily on cocoa, big companies will use what's called hedging to protect them from sharp price changes. And the way they do that is with futures contracts. So futures contracts are a derivative, pretty similar to options if you know how options work. Except, as is in the name, an option contract gives you the option but not the obligation to buy something at a fixed price. A futures contract is just a fixed contract. So it's saying, I will buy this commodity from you at this fixed price over this period or by this date or something like that. Yeah. So it's
essentially locking in prices, right?
Exactly right. So a company will do this and maybe they'll miss out on slightly better costs if the commodity price had gone down. But if there is a sudden increase, they're good for a little while because they've got these contracts going out months or maybe even a year or something like that, where they've kind of locked in what their expenses will be for this particular commodity.
Yeah, it works well for suppliers. It works well for both ends, because the people that need the cocoa have got the supply locked in at a certain price, and also for those producing, they have also got a price locked in, so they can go, well, I'm not going to be subject to price fluctuations. Obviously, it wouldn't help them so much now when the price goes up suddenly if they've already locked in a whole bunch of sales. But, generally speaking, it helps them iron out the kinks, and it gives them a little bit of security in their business.
Yep. And so that's why you might not have seen prices go up all that much yet. But there's only so long that a company could have been hedging for. Eventually, if the problem or the price of the commodity just stays elevated, the hedging effects run out, right? They run out of contracts that they've set in place at lower prices. And that seems to be the case with this particular problem. Paul Jules, commodity analyst at Rabobank, expects consumers to start seeing big price increases by early 2025. And he kind of, in the CNBC article, they kind of spoke about some of the reasons why it doesn't look like this problem is going to go away. Farmers in Ivory Coast, which is one of the big producers, have actually been exiting the industry based on this kind of crisis.
Right.
The government actually sets fixed prices for farmers, so they haven't been able to benefit at all from the increased prices. So the government is actually in control in Ivory Coast of the price of cocoa, essentially, for the farmers. So they haven't been able to benefit, even though they've obviously suffered the consequences of the problem. So the result has been just a lot of farmers are just changing what crops they farm to more lucrative crops, such as rubber is another one that they kind of do in that region. So it looks like it actually could be a very long time before supply is kind of back to where it once was. Not just because of the disease, but because you've actually got farmers in some of these big production countries switching out of those markets because they're
bailing.
Because why would they? Why would they stick around if they're not going to benefit from the prices when they're high? Yep. Why would they stick around, deal with all of the problems and the costs, only for when it's better for the prices to come back down and they're back where they were previously? They may as well go into a more lucrative crop. So it makes perfect sense why it's happening, but it means that for consumers, it's we're probably going to have this see higher chocolate prices for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, crazy. That's really interesting. That is exactly a supply shock. Yeah, we shall see.
Yep.
Although it's first world problem, but it's not good with Easter coming up.
No, it's not. Yeah, I can't say I'm a big consumer.
I mean, it's much worse for these farmers. It's much worse for these farmers. But in my bubble of the universe, I want cheaper chocolate.
But how will the Easter Bunny afford it?
Exactly. We're going to bankrupt the Easter Bunny. No. Oh, Easter's ruined.
Yeah.